Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, and for the second year in a row, I am joined by my good friend Aram in Toronto for the playoffs. Welcome, man.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Spring is here. It's been a while, but spring is here, and that means playoff season. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting into this and seeing what kind of a sequel we'll have this playoff run.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a few days off, admittedly, since the end of the season, which was 5 days ago, and I feel good. Like I feel like all the angst and kind of frustration of the season is past me now, and everybody is 0-0 record wise. So there's no more hovering around 500 chatter, and we get to start fresh, right? This is what we've always wanted. Just get healthy and whole. And it looks like they're going to be that way for the playoffs. And to me, this Kings matchup, it's the one that I had wanted. How about you?
Yeah, me too. I mean, first of all, you felt rested. Like, imagine how our old head, championship dynastic core is feeling. They must be getting recharged. And like watching those play-in games, it's like, oh, thank God we got out of the play-in, right? And it's lined. Speaking of the Kings, I think it's lined up pretty well for us. This is not a matchup that's going to be easy, but I think it's the preferred path. There were possibilities of playing the Suns in the first round, which I think most of us wouldn't have wanted to see that. I think this is a good way to kind of lie in the weeds, work some stuff out, get Wiggins back in there, and go on a run. And this is what we've been waiting for all season. Because, I mean, not gonna lie, this season's been pretty frustrating. But like you said, we're 0-0. We don't have to worry about the road record anymore. You only got to win one on the road now, and just hold serve at home. So, which they've done before. So, as frustrating as it's been, it's clean slate, and here we go.
With the Kings, it's crazy to me because the main reason, is the short distance of travel, and then there's other benefits. The Kings are good, but at the end of the day, they only finished 4 games ahead of the Warriors.
You can count the losses that we kicked, that would have equaled 4 wins, right? Like Charlotte, Orlando, Detroit, blah, 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 right? Like you could easily just rattle off some that we would have been exactly in their position and had home court. I mean, but we're not here to talk about the past.
A little bit, it comes into play.
A little bit, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think it aligns well. I would also say that they're a fun team to watch too. I mean, check back with me after 2 games. If we're in a 0-2 hole, like they won't be so fun to as an opponent anymore. But I am looking forward to it. Like I like their style of play. They have some fun players, some familiar faces, that kind of thing. It's kind of nice to see the new old Warriors, right? A different version of what we remember of the playoff drought. I'm curious if they're gonna do they do the cowbells anymore? Like, remember they used to do that, right?
Yeah.
They used to do that. Do they still do that?
I think before the last game, Warriors game up there, they have like a giant cowbell that they ring, a ceremonial ringing of a cowbell. Because on League Pass, you don't always get the commercials. You see the in-game feed, and I think it was before the game, and they were ringing this giant cowbell, and I was like, yeah, embrace that, go for it. It's funny, man. It's like, remember before the Warriors played the Raptors in the finals in 2019. I kind of like the Raptors, and I kind of like the Toronto fans, and that's how I feel about Sacramento, because during the season I was like happy for Mike Brown. I was like, if it's not the Warriors, I'll take Sac. But I have a feeling that during the series that'll change. It'll be like the Raptors. I'll be like, I hate those
Oh,
guys.
oh yeah, 100%.
We're
I
already
hate the players.
seeing.
I hate Mike Brown. I hate their fans. I hate cowbells.
Yeah, we're already seeing like the fans, especially on Twitter, and come at each other and stuff like that. I've had a couple people comment to me something about the the Warriors not being able to beat the Kings this past season because of a missed foul call on Clay versus her, or even resting people. But at the end of the day, you know, my response is, yeah, that's cool. Like that don't matter. You know what I mean? That's neither here nor there. And that just shows that, we as Warriors fans have experienced deep playoff runs for the better part of 8, 9 years or something. And the Kings fans, they don't even know what it's like. So
hmm
it'll be interesting for sure.
That's kind of like they're the new old Warriors, right? You think about where a lot of the younger fans maybe were 10 years ago, with their kind of maiden voyages into the playoffs. We'll see. And there definitely is that kind of regional family rivalry between these two teams. And just to tease a little bit later, I do have a little thing that we can talk about some of their crossovers between these two teams who have some linked histories. But before we do that, maybe we should talk about the series a little bit, break it down. I mean, we're all pretty familiar with the personnel. Each team is pretty familiar with each other. So rather than kind of like getting into the weeds too much of like those matchups, I had a couple of questions that may be a little bit broader, um,
Mm-hmm.
bigger picture, that I think that you will be able to extrapolate in this series, because I think, hey, no disrespect to the Kings, but the winning a championship and repeating, that's the ultimate goal for the Warriors. Sorry, Kings fans, to sound so entitled, but hey, that's what happens when you're a dynasty. You get that mentality. But so the frustration of this past season has been deep. So I'm curious, what do you want to see in this series that's going to make you believe this team can repeat?
Defense. You know, I want to see defense on the road. I want to see focus and execution. And, those may seem like general things, but those were the constant themes of the season, whether it was Clay hunting shots. I mean, Clay's been great, but there were, early on, those were his flaws. Shooting himself out of games, forcing shots, Jordan Poole stumbling over himself, making poor decisions, taking heat check shots that only Steph should take. And just overall, like the team just playing together, being more on a string. And that's what I think it will take. And that's what we're expecting. And I talked about how a lot this season, it didn't feel like they were happy to be there, that joy was gone. I feel
Yeah.
like, of course, winning helps, and going 8-2 at the end of the season is helpful. But getting Gary Payton the second is helpful because he certainly makes Steph happy. They were always joking when they were both injured on the sidelines. That's great. But like on the court, you could see how he affects them. So I think just finding that mojo, finding that rhythm, being who they were, honestly, maybe before Draymond punched Poole, not to put it all on that, but that certainly like kind of put a
Yeah.
curveball in the vibe of the season and the team. And, getting Wiggins back and hopefully getting him in rhythm within this series, first couple games, hopefully some kind of rhythm.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I had the exact same points, like, just take this seriously now, right? Like, so much of it felt like going through the motions. And I don't think it's just the players. I felt like the coaching staff had a lack of urgency too. You know, seeing Mike Brown and remembering what he would do with the defense last year. And, obviously, man to man defense is going to be what they do most of the time. But every once in a while he'd throw those like curveball zones, right? And you kind of saw that being folded into their defense more in the last third of the season,
Mm-hmm.
just selectively, and it felt like it was like, oh, okay, now you're actually like a little bit more engaged, and you're not just like from from the coaching staff. It's just like, come on, you need to get these players to step it up a little bit, to think the game a little bit more, and take it seriously. And so I mean, I would be encouraged to see a little bit more of that, and just to throw some wrinkles out there, just different looks, because I think what we saw last year, and it's not to just like ride on last year, but that's why they traded for GP2, was to kind
Mhm.
of ride on last year's fives, right? But you saw that they could figure out a team using defense, right? They
Mhm.
figured
Mhm.
out every opponent that they had last year. So at least a way to slow them down. And
Mhm.
so, I think if we see, two-way wigs come back, I think it like a relative copy. I mean, he was playing at such a high level last year. I think it's probably unfair to expect that, at least in the first couple of rounds, if we advance that far. But
Mhm.
um, but if he's playing defense and rebounding, that's going to be amazing. GP2 has been promising in terms of the contributions and the change that he's made, and him and DiVincenzo have been nice to have as those point of attack guys. So I think that, just like you said, those are the things that I'm looking for. Now, you also kind of mentioned my other question. This kind of global question is like, what's gonna kill you? What's gonna drive you crazy and make you not believe? And my one of my top points is quote unquote wild Jordan Poole. Just the one that you mentioned, right? Dribbling off his
Yeah.
foot, falling down, complaining, shooting 35 footers. Like, it drives me crazy. He's such an important part of this team's success. And I mean, I I am hopeful that how well he's been playing down the stretch is like what he did in the playoffs last year. He had a reduced role. He was coming off the bench, and but he was doing what needed to be done. So I mean, I'm hopeful, but you just never know, right? Do you have a non-Jordan Poole thing that will drive you crazy if you see it in this series?
I mean, he's part of it, but it's kind of a general thing. And I guess specifically talking Steph and Draymond, it's turnovers. They've thrown so many turnovers over the years. It's part of their game, taking those risks and making those passes. And there's a lot of passing in
Mm-hmm.
this Steve Kerr offense. And sometimes somebody goes back door and you miss them, or somebody you think is going back door and they don't. So things happen like that. But there have been a lot of times where those have been their undoing. And in the one of their last few games, I forgot which one it was, they had a ton of turnovers, right? And people were making a big deal out. I talked about it. If this were just an outlier, then all good, you know.
Yeah.
But this is something that, again, it's been part of who they've been over the years, but their margin of error is much slimmer, and we've seen them be extremely careless. And so it's, again, it's one thing if like turnovers are your one Achilles heel, but the turnovers, the poor defense, especially on the road, the fouling,
Mm-hmm.
and also, one thing is like it's been talked about how other teams shoot really well against the Warriors when the Warriors are in their gym, right? I think
Yeah.
that'll be mitigated by the fact that like those teams were getting up for the Warriors, and now the Warriors are getting up for the playoffs. So I think that'll be
Yeah.
kind of canceled out a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, Gary Payton the second, right? I've talked about this and we've texted about this, how you get Payton and then you get Wiggins back and then you have Kuminga and DiVincenzo. Uh, and then all of a sudden you have like this kind of ripple effect of wing defenders, perimeter defenders, who all of a sudden it's like, not that all those guys are going to be on the court for the Warriors at the same time, but show me a team with 3 or 4 excellent offensive perimeter players, and I'll show you like 4 guys. And then if you need to throw Clay on one of them, 5 guys
Mm-hmm.
that you could put throughout a game on those dudes. So that's something that I'm really confident about, that I'm looking forward to, because it was like, just get in the tournament and let me see a team that could beat the Warriors in 4 out of 7. And not saying that it can happen, but looking at the team that, was around 500 all season long, that's not this team, right? Especially
Mm-hmm.
with Peyton back and Wiggins back. And then you have the vets who, mentally are going to be more checked in, and the coaching staff as well. So that's where, I kind of gained some confidence in them. But if they start punting the ball around the court and throwing, you know, passes like behind the back, or bad transition passes and stuff like that, taking care of the ball and taking those possessions seriously, and that also means like, on the other end, like I said, not fouling like crazy. Because two of the stats I always look at are number of fouls, number of free throws. Actually, three stats is turnovers, right? So if they always say if you win the turnover battle, you'll probably win the game. Or is that
Yeah.
mostly like a football thing?
I
But in theory,
think it
right?
still
Like,
applies. Yeah.
yeah. So
The point of you have to beat the Warriors 4 out of 7 times, and who's going to do that? In the West, I mean, I know we're going to talk about the larger bracket at some point, but I feel pretty confident at the start here, that if somebody is going to do it, it's going to be it's going to mean somebody took a really big leap, and that might be like Denver down the road, or like there's always that team that you have to vanquish on your way up, right?
mhm.
And that happens by taking a leap, right? A team or an opponent, a player, that kind of thing. And so, out of the West, people, like, I guess we'll see. I mean, there are certain teams like Memphis, Denver, who want that, right? Um, I just I don't know. I don't know. I guess that's the fun of it too. Is there anything you're excited for? I'm really excited to see Kaminga in the playoffs. 1 year later, right? Like last year, he wasn't ready, and luckily they were able to absorb, the fact that he wasn't. He's such an important part of this team, just like from an athletic standpoint. Like he and GP2 are like their only like athletic guys, right? And
Yeah,
so,
Wiggins.
and yeah, well, yeah, Wiggins. You know what? It's been a long time. He hasn't played since Valentine's Day or whatever. It's easy to forget right now, but yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see if this can be his kind of like leap, that will just kind of like propel him forward, for next season and his career, because, man, he we've been excited about him since draft day, and
Mhm.
it's all kind of happening, right? He's only, what is he? Is he
He's
20?
20,
Right? He's
a
still
young
20,
20,
and he's two
21 in
years in,
October.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like this guy's really exciting. And I feel like he's a bright lights guy. We've seen him play really well in a lot of kind of more marquee games, and so that's kind of like the thing I'm most excited for, outside of, of course, like I'm excited for them to win, and I'm excited to see the dynasty still,
Right.
still trying to go for it. But, like those are kind of givens. Like we kind of accept that, like, hey, Steph is good for 35-5,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
which is, I mean,
Yeah.
that in itself is kind of incredible. But what are you excited for?
Obviously, Kaminga, I mean, like you said, we've talked about him early on, and, even before the draft. And I'm always just looking forward to him in front of a national stage, because I think because he plays on the Warriors, he doesn't start, he doesn't get a ton of minutes or a ton of touches, um, compared to other guys at the top of his draft class, that people underestimate how good he is. And granted, he's never been the first, second, third option on a rebuilding team, but still, I always look forward to him showing the rest of the basketball watching world how good he is.
I want people to like tweet you or whatever and be like, "Oh man, how could the Warriors have him too?" I want that. That's what I want.
Um, the other thing I'm looking forward to, honestly, is rotations.
Hmm.
and combinations and closer lineups. Because I've been saying since November that I felt Kuminga and DiVincenzo had proven themselves as closers, and that Steve Kerr had a ton of options to close out depending on the situation, depending on the matchup. So of course you have Steph, Clay, Draymond, and back then it was Wiggins, but obviously we'll have to wait and see. So if you have those three, and then you can throw in Wiggins, Peyton, Looney, DiVincenzo, Kuminga, Poole.
Hmm.
Those are all guys in different scenarios that you could throw out there. And, I'm sure, we know the ones that Kerr's going to go with first and foremost, right? It'll be Looney or Peyton or, Wiggins, a combination of those three. But, I'm looking forward to seeing that. And in a similar vein on a defensive side, like I've been talking about since the Peyton trade, and hoping that he would come back and hoping Wiggins would come back, and just seeing the aforementioned defense, because that could potentially be one of the better perimeter defensive units, or like, rotations or lineups or whatever, just guys you could throw out there. And to me, that's, defense wins championships and all that
Hmm.
stuff. And again, in general, teams that worry me are the ones that are much bigger and have
Yeah.
scorers and guys who can do all these kinds of things. Uh, but against most teams, like, that's what I like, and that's what I actually like about them playing the Kings. The Kings are good, very good, but to me, the fully like healthy playing Kings, not resting Kings, they haven't played this Warriors team either. And some people might say just adding Gary Payton and a Wiggins who hasn't played in a while isn't a big deal. But as we've said, like a focused team, uh, a team that has a stronger perimeter defense than any time the regular Kings have faced the Warriors. Like, that's what I'm looking forward to, right? Like,
Hmm.
the Warriors are a better defensive team potentially. I mean, probably if they can do it on the road. uh, and that's where I think they have a particular advantage beyond just the experience. You know what I mean? Because then if you talk about the experience stuff, it's like, my question is like, what the Warriors are probably always looking for. What I would be looking for is like, when will the Kings get shook? Like, that's
Hmm.
always a question for these guys who have no real deep experience. The person who has the most experience is Harrison Barnes. And so, do they know what that pressure is like? Can they meet the moment in that way? And I think that's another thing where I think it's checkbox uh for the Warriors.
They're a nice team, and we haven't
Yeah.
talked much about them. Like they are a really nice team. De'Aaron Fox he's gone up another level. But they do feel a little bit short on maybe some wing defense, right? For them to kind of advance far. And so that would be the kind of big thing that I would count against them. I mean, they have some nice pieces. I really think they're gonna have some good games. Like Fox is gonna have like a couple of great games. Maybe they hopefully can just slow him down a little bit, make him a volume shooter, volume scorer. But there will be a couple of games where their 3-point shooters get really hot and they win a couple. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to like take them lightly at all. I think that they're just not ready yet. To be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah, so it's not to take anything away from them. And yeah, I think they're just not quite there yet, right?
Yeah, no, they're real good, and they can present some problems for the Warriors, like Sabonis is scoring, somebody staying in front of De'Aaron Fox. But again, like, the fact that we have more perimeter defenders, you go back 2 months, and they're going to put DiVincenzo on Fox. You know what I mean? If he's starting the
Hmm.
game, and then they'll put Kaminga on him eventually. But now, he won't start. But then you could put, you'll put Wiggins on him, but most likely, he sounds like he's starting. So you put him out there, or you put Peyton on him next, and then you just kind of go through all these different dudes, and you give them different looks, right? And
Yep.
again, it's
Yep.
like Herder before. I mean, I guess Clay would guard him, but you could also put Wiggins on him if Peyton's on Fox. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there's definite problems, and yeah, I mean, I like the Kings. I mean, they're a fun team, a good team, but I just don't think they're there yet. I think, like you said, it's one of those classic things that, although they're not all young dudes, like they're not like the Oklahoma City Thunder in terms of age. Uh, they haven't gotten there yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And anything can happen, right? If the Warriors, the Warriors prove to be who they were during the season, then okay, all bets are off, right? Like it's like, oh, okay, then all this lip service and platitudes gone, you know.
Yeah.
But I tend to believe that they'll put on like their suit and tie for this one, metaphorically speaking, because no one
Yeah.
wears suits and ties anymore. But that they'll show up and take it.
Do you want to make your prediction now for
Yeah,
this
yeah,
series?
yeah. My prediction is Warriors in 6. I say that because I give one game to the Kings because of Mike Brown. And the Kings are good, but like Mike Brown will figure something out to win at least one. And then the Warriors will cough up at least one. You know, I feel like that's the lingering effect of the regular season,
Yeah.
that these habits that they've had, I don't think they can all go away. I think that it'll come back to bite them at least once. So I'm going 6. If the Warriors had played consistently, if these were the Warriors from last season, I would say 5. Just like I did. I think I said 5 for the Nuggets last year
Yeah.
for the first round. I'm saying 6. I think they win at Chase Center. I
Same.
think they take one of the first 2,
Yeah.
and then the Kings get game 5 in Sac, and then the Warriors win in Chase Center in game 6.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm picking in 6 as well. I just, for the same reasons, the habits are hard to break. And, working somebody back into the rotation is also, even if it's somebody who, is familiar with everything, it just takes a little bit of time, that, may not all just be positive adjustment. Right. So it will affect the rotation a little bit and whatnot, maybe even more from the coaching standpoint, or just as much as the coaching standpoint of how to kind of dole out the minutes, how to integrate him back in. I mean, you see that they've been saying he looks great, he's been cleared to play, but and he's a huge piece, and it's all like a positive thing. And yeah, they're gonna kick one away. They just do that, like they just do that. And
You've seen it so many times,
maddening.
right?
Yeah, I mean, if we've learned anything, then But I mean, so I think it'll be a good series. And now, if I can ask, again, even more zooming out. We've both picked that the Warriors will win in 6, but let's play a little bit of a what if game. What if the Warriors lose in the first round, and what if the Warriors win back-to-back championships? I mean, I
Oh,
guess there are possibilities in between, but let's take the first one first.
man, I've said this for months now, that the moves in the summer will depend on how, at first, like if they make the playoffs, and then how they look, how deep they get, and then just how they play. Are they struggling? Does somebody get hurt and they lose? Are they clearly outmatched? Are there just flaws where it's like, you know what, you have to completely redo this? So, I mean, if they lose in the first round, I think a lot of changes will happen. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
just normal, because even if they play well and then lose, that's like bad, because this is a
Mm-hmm.
series that everyone expects them to win. So they just couldn't get over the hump. Then I go back to all the thoughts I had around the All-Star break trade deadline, which is like, you trade Wiseman to hopefully keep Draymond. So does that happen? Does Bob Myers stick around? Right now, everything feels good. It seems, at least on the surface, that everybody's feeling solid and they're excited about this playoff push to run it back. But if they lose, then all those negative vibes, all the chatter, Bob Myers moving on, is Steve Kerr, did he lose the team?
Yeah.
uh, during the course of this series to lose the series? Does Draymond actually do something that hurts them? So does Poole look like he's the guy that you move? So I think if they lose in the first round, I think at least two major names could go. And I'm not picking two, but I'm just saying like it would be that deep to go
Yeah.
into like it would be one of the core vets. It would be like Bob Myers. I don't think it would be Kerr, but maybe Kerr, Jordan Poole. Somebody like that. I think like I also used to say that if they were to come up short and not make the playoffs, I thought that everybody would be on the table except for Steph and Looney. Steph because he's Steph, Looney because no team has proven to want him enough to pay him, and that his salary isn't like high enough that
Yeah.
like the Warriors probably hold on to him. And I guess I would throw Kuminga in that as well. Like,
Yeah.
but at this point, but because back then it felt like they would have traded any of their young dudes. But I don't. I don't think that would happen. So, but if they win the title, then you come back with the core three: Poole, Wiggins, Looney. DiVincenzo's gone, but you have Peyton back. You have Kuminga, so you got eight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eight guys of a team where everybody in that eight has won at least two titles. Has two rings. And then you figure out what you do with Moody, integrate Patrick Baldwin Jr. Do you maybe see if Quinones can stick? Is
Yeah.
Rollins? So you have some pieces, maybe you move, and then you fill in with some vets. You learn from the previous offseason and you find some ring chasers, somebody that you can, or a make good guy. I don't know if this collective bargaining agreement will take away
Yeah.
their that repeater or taxpayer, whatever, mid-level. So that would hurt them. But I would feel confident. They would also have their draft pick, so if they could find somebody that is serviceable. So
Yeah.
obviously that's pie in the sky optimism, right? But
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that's all a good problem to have, right? Like, I mean, certainly all these like details of the CBA and stuff, but it would be like, who cares? We just won back to back, you know. But I think you would have to run it back and go
yeah,
for a three-peat that you didn't get the first time, right? Like, you would have to do it, like,
mm-hmm.
like f the picks, f the
Yeah,
salary cap, just like pay as much as you can and go for it, right? Like, and hey, we should be so lucky. That'd be amazing, right? It's interesting, like, you just going back to the first point, if they lose in the first round, I almost feel like that's worse than if they had not made the playoffs, because losing in a playoffs that you are expected to win the series, to advance, those kind of things, is higher profile. It's kind of like more embarrassing, you know
yeah,
um this team that was supposed to do this and they couldn't even do this, right? You miss the playoffs, a lot fewer eyeballs are on you. So I think they'll be, even, yeah, to like echo your point, they'll be more inclined to make moves. And who knows? I mean, I think that's a great point about pick two out of a core of people, and it would probably be depending on how that series went and in what and in what fashion did they get embarrassed, right?
mm-hmm.
So I think team management and ownership is often reactionary and emotional. I mean, that's why they get into this uh position in the first place, is because they want to have that. So I would expect it. Whereas if they win a back to back, like, management would have no choice, and
Yeah,
just like you said, they wouldn't have to do too much. Again, a nice problem to have. So there's a little bit of a NorCal affinity for Sacramento and Mike Brown, and hey, good for Vivek. He's just been clowned on for so long. He deserves some. He just he
Stauskas, Stauskas.
he deserves nice things, or his what was his playing 4-on-5 or whatever because it worked on his kids' basketball team. Oh man,
Was it like a cherry picker? Was that what it was?
I think
Like
so, something like that.
four guys on defense, then a cherry
Yeah.
picker.
And it was like his daughter's like 9-year-old basketball team or something like that. Hey, think outside the box, right? That's okay, Vivek. Just don't say it out. Just don't say it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
But and then we've mentioned that Harrison Barnes, good warrior, good in those
Good
early
dude.
days, good dude. But also on the current Warriors, Dante played briefly with the Kings and seemed to think that he was more in their plans than he was. So I actually went back through time and we kind of did something similar to this when we did pick the best players who played on the Raptors and Warriors.
Right. Yeah.
I've compiled a list of, and it may not be completely exhaustive. This is just people that whose names I noticed or recognized. So I've created a list, and we'll pick our top 5 best players who have played for the Warriors and Kings. So I just went with Sacramento. Like I didn't go back to like Kansas City or wherever else they played, right? Because so I think it's about like from like 1985 onward. So all right, you ready? You ready for this list? It's a good list, and there's actually there's a surprise one that I know
one big name.
Well, yeah, well, and the big one is actually pretty interesting. So of course, we mentioned Harrison Barnes, Dante DiVincenzo, but of course Mitch Richmond, right? The trade that changed 2 franchises in a way.
The Kings didn't really change, but yeah.
well, they changed because they traded him for Chris Webber, right? So by virtue of that,
that's true.
He eventually changed them. So of course that's the the next big name. And now these names kind of go in chronological order. For the older Warriors fans out there, you'll recognize some of these names, but I'm saving the surprise one for the very end. As a did you know, Patrick? And so, okay, here we go. Mitch Richmond, Chris Webber, Jim Peterson, Vincent Askew, Rod Higgins. I think I skipped around in time because Matt Barnes is much later. John Barry, Jim Jackson. He's good broadcaster, actually. He's
solid.
He's totally solid. Carl Landry,
all right.
Omri Caspi.
Scared to shoot.
He was so good again. Like when he played for the Kings against the Warriors, he was always so good. DeMarcus Cousins. Marco Bellinelli. Willie Cauley-Stein. Barely played for the Warriors, but also from that ill-fated season, Alec Burks, Kent Bazemore, Damian Jones, and NBA champion Nemanja Bjelica. Now I'm this is the did you know, Patrick? Did you know, and this is quite the twist of fate, did you know that Billy Owens played for the Kings? He played for both the Warriors. He
played for the Kings?
Yeah.
After he played a game?
He played parts of 2 seasons.
Wow. So
it's wild, right? Like, so he got traded from Mitch Richmond, who got traded for Chris Webber. And anyway, I I didn't know that. I was shocked to see his name on Basketball Reference, but there he was.
The original number 30.
Yes. So when number 30 is retired on the eventually you'll say, that was a number of 2 great players. But so what would be your starting 5 here? Who are your top 5?
Oh, man.
Mitch and Chris Webber. You're obvious.
Yeah, Mitch, Webber. Let's see. I guess I should have written these names down.
You want me to? I'll drop it in the chat here. Don't
make it easy.
About
Harrison Barnes, Dante DiVincenzo.
You're just picking the recent guys.
And I mean, I'll pick DeMarcus Cousins if he's in his prime.
In his prime.
Actually, yeah, I would take that because I'm looking at the guards. I'll put DiVincenzo out there with Weber and Cousins, next to Mitch Richmond.
Yeah.
So that's actually pretty good. That is pretty good because I don't see any other guards I would take over him. I'd have Matt Barnes coming off the bench for sure, and Kent Bazemore at the end of the bench.
I mean, you're talking about prime Jim Jackson. He's pretty good, but otherwise,
that's true. Actually, that's true. Jimmy Jackson. But I mean,
but he wasn't. Prime. He was never good for either team. Yeah. He was good, for the Mavericks, right? So
prime on the Mavericks his first few years, so averaging 25 points. So, I guess I don't think of him in that respect. But if we're thinking about they were in their primes on either the Warriors or the Kings, then I would stick with that. But good point. If it was in general in their careers, I would take Jimmy Jackson above DiVincenzo or maybe over Barnes.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey, this was a surprising list. Some good players on here. Some others who are maybe not so great. Jim Peterson. But okay, now also crossover edition is four head coaches who coach both teams. So we got so you got to pick your coach too. We got Rick Adelman, Eric Musselman, Keith Smart, and Gary St. Jean.
Oh, wow. That's easy. I will take Rick Adelman.
Yeah.
Just because he went so far with the Kings.
Yeah. I mean, and he was good with the Blazers too. I mean, he wasn't able to do much with us,
but nobody could. That was a raw deal. Anybody that coached the Warriors in that 90s era was doomed to failure.
Cannon fodder.
Yeah. So I take Adelman. But also, we forgot to mention props to Mike Brown for being the fourth attempt at a former Warriors coach of any kind in his Vivek era to actually be successful, right? They had Mike Malone, Gentry, Walton.
Oh, right. Wait, I totally forgot about those guys too. Oh man, the more recent entries. Okay, yeah, because I was looking at the players, I wasn't looking at the coaches. You know what? And I also forgot one more player. And this was I highlighted this because I was like, whoa, this is a weird team. The 95-96 Kings, they had Mitch Richmond still. That was a team that had Billy Owens. They had Byron Houston. And also, I forgot to put this in my list of players. They also had Sharunas Marciulionis. He was still playing by then. And I mean, that would be somebody to put in your guard mix. Although he wasn't so great with them. I think that was towards the end of his career. But, always a beloved former Warrior.
Oh man, I would put him ahead of DiVincenzo then,
Yeah.
In that rotation. So
yeah. No, I love that guy, but this was a weird team to it shocked me to see this roster. It was so many former Warriors. So weird.
Yeah. Cool. Whew. You got anything else?
No, I'm good.
Well, there you have it, folks. Our Warriors Kings preview. Both of us have the Warriors in 6, so we'll see how that pans out. Fingers crossed that we get the playoff Warriors and not the recent regular season Warriors, man. Thanks for coming on. And you can find Aram on Twitter at Aram Collier, ARAM COLLIER. Thanks, man.
Anytime.